with here. Starting. So, yes, you were saying that that over time that the teachings of the Buddha became polluted.
Mm.
And one of the ways of thinking about that is that everyone who comes to the teaching of the Buddha, including before the Buddha himself, when he was still a bodhisattva, he too was coming to the teachings from ignorance. Now, as he said, that this is an old path or an old method, it's been known before, and there is fairly good evidence that it's been rediscovered in the West from time to time, and that individuals come up with the whole point of uh, that you can see that in Stoicism in ancient Greece. And in fact, you can see it in the teachings of Jesus. You can see it in many places. Um, this teaching or this awakening uh, that we don't have to do it the way that we were taught to do it, that we can
Mm.
figure it out for ourselves and we can feel the way that we want to feel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and ultimately every one of us uh, makes their own morality.
Yes.
That in fact all of us do from childhood. Some
Mm.
of us listen to the rules and they make up our morality based upon the rules. But all along, we're always living up to, or not living up to, but let us say living against our own standard of morality. And most of the time, we fail at our own standards.
Yes. Yes.
And the reason that that's true is because we started as a failure in diapers, that we all start out as infants. We all
Yeah.
start out making one mistake after another and slowly learning from it. But somewhere along the line, we were taught that if you make a mistake, you're supposed to feel bad rather than learning from it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
That somehow you're not good enough if you make a mistake. That when the other kids, for instance, tease you, instead of teasing with them back and everybody having fun, you wind up feeling a victim again
Mm.
and you withdraw and you resent what they're doing when in fact they're just having fun.
Yeah.
Off
Yeah.
of your expense or off of your mistake, but that's okay. You could have fun off of it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that partly I have seen, in fact, in Thailand. And this one of the situations that started me to think about this kind of stuff was when I saw a group of about 5 or 6 teenagers dancing and prancing down the street and having fun, and one of them falls down. And the other group turn around and look at him, and everybody's laughing, and he's laughing
Mm.
too when he gets up. Now,
Yeah. Yeah.
now the young kids in the United States, they'd laugh and he'd feel bad, and maybe the teacher would come out and help him. But after they become teenagers or young adults, if one
Yeah.
of them falls down, everybody feels bad, and oh, come, let me help you up. Oh,
Yeah.
poor
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
are you harmed? And women really do this even more than men, but they still do it. And so we wind up feeling bad about our mistakes and we try to hide them. This is one
Mm.
of the sources of deceit,
Mm.
is, is because we're not living up to our own standards, but we can't
Mm.
see that and do it joyfully.
Mm. Mm.
So anyway, back to that story originally about the issue was is that everyone comes to these teachings ignorant that we can, in fact, feel the way that we want to, but that we feel the way that we do often because we are taught that way. Now, the feeling
Mm.
system is already there. That's what we inherit. That's the instincts.
Mm.
So fear is an instinct. Anger is an instinct. Um, but also great jubilation and joy and celebration is instinctual. But our society promotes one over the other. Instead of promoting celebration and joy, our society promotes it from the position of, I can make money off of your labor, therefore you do what you're told to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it has to do with that greed, ill will relationship. That always, anytime that you find greed, there seems to be ill will associated with it. And anytime that you find ill will, you generally find greed associated with it.
Mm,
And it
mm.
generally has to do with the kind of zero-sum game idea or mentality. So that could be said as
Yeah,
the
yeah.
original
Win-lose.
delusion.
Yeah.
The original delusion is people think that we live in a zero-sum game, when in fact
Mm,
it's not a zero-sum game, that it's a win-win game, that everybody can win. We don't have to have winners and
mm.
losers. We can have winners all. But that's part of our culture. And you can see that that's actually what comes out of the wild, that's kind of a wild mentality. That unfortunately
Yeah,
dinner had to pay for the meal.
yeah, yeah. Exactly.
So, or the other one is that if you're not an invited guest, you're on the menu.
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. With us
So,
or against us.
and so this is how we came out of it, with the kind of a dog eat dog mentality, and now it's
Mm.
nothing but a human eat human mentality, with various degrees of violence. This
Yes,
is
yeah, yeah.
this is our nature. This is where we then come to the fact that that kind of lifestyle has uh, dissatisfactions. It's not the best way to live. It's the way that we came out of our ancestry that needed those instincts for survival.
Yeah,
Now that
yeah,
we're not in a survival situation, we can recognize that things are not nearly as scarce as we thought they were. And in
yeah.
fact, we don't live in a scarce world. We live in a world of plenty. There's plenty enough for everyone.
Yeah,
But we
more than
live
plenty. Yeah.
mentally in a world of scarcity,
Yeah,
because that's, mhm. And so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what's to be overcome, is to come out of our scarcity mentality into a wealthy mentality, to come out of the victim into the champion.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Have you heard of the idea of positive versus negative motivation? So like negative motivation is sort of aversive, and then positive is like desirous, but there's no lack there. You know, you feel like you have enough, and then you want even more on top of it, sort of. So it's sort of
Well,
like switching from that to escapist kind of negativity motivation.
Well, that's exactly right. In fact, that's one of the subtle issues about affirmations,
Mm,
or the
mm,
power of positive thinking,
mm.
is that down under that is that we know deep in that um, quasi intellectual but definitely emotional level, we know it ain't true. We know it ain't so.
Mm, yeah,
All
yeah,
right. And so that sets up into a state of longing or greed or wanting to have it, rather than affirming the fact that we've already got it. So that's why it's mislabeled. They call it an affirmation. It's not actually an affirmation, it's a wannabe,
mm,
the way that it's
yes,
all
yeah,
practiced.
yeah. That makes sense. Yeah,
Even may all beings be happy kind of meta meditations. It's still a wannabe rather than an affirmation of, wow, wouldn't it be nice if everybody was as happy as we are right now?
yeah,
Now, that's the attitude of generosity, rather than the attitude of, oh, may all beings be happy, even me. So, um, it really does have that attitude issue built into the package. And so everybody comes to the Buddha or comes to the teachings of the Buddha, the Buddha Dhamma, and we use it, the Buddha Dhamma, in the sense of now not talking about an individual like Sakyamuni or the Tathagata. We're talking about uh, awake Dhamma, or let us call it wisdom. And Dhamma, actually, in this sense, is there's many different definitions of the word Dhamma, but one of the words that's easy to understand is the word thing. Just like tatata means thisness or here or right in front, the word
Yes.
Dhamma means thing. And so Dhammakai then would be the entire body of all things.
Right, gotcha.
Okay. And that the Buddha Dhamma, you could say it's the Buddha thing. Or another way of saying it, it's the wise thing.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So Buddha Dhamma means the wise thing. That's basically, and all we have to do in any particular moment of time is just do the wise thing rather than the instinctual thing.
And so I'm guessing the wise thing is to just be happy anyway, right?
Well, absolutely, in the sense of why not? I mean, if you've got a choice between being
Yeah,
unhappy and happy, which would you choose?
being happy, yeah.
Well, that's the same thing that with Dukkha, Dukkha, Nirodha is your choice. That's the entire teaching of the Buddha right there. That's it.
Right. And so I'm
Okay.
guessing that I'm guessing meditation is us developing the skills to be able to do that, to be able to perform that sort of mind control, direct mind control where we just be happy anyway. Is that like sort of the point of meditation then?
Um, well, you could say then that it might be better to use the word, when we're using the word meditation, it has many connotations because it was one of
Yeah,
the words that
yeah.
was stolen from the Catholic Church. I think that, in fact, the
Right,
Catholic Church
right.
ought to take that into court and take their word meditation back and sue Buddhists worldwide for ever using the word. That a much, much better word would be practice.
Practice. Yes, yeah. Practicing the Dharma, yeah. The Buddha Dharma.
That's what the really important word is, and the Buddha used that word or something close to that and stressed it in the sense of thus one trains oneself. That thus
Mm.
there is the tatatha, or this way one trains oneself. Okay.
I see. Right, right.
And
Yeah,
that,
yeah. So it's like practice makes perfect. Like
well,
that sort of you train it again
practice
and again.
makes good enough.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess that's what I meant to say. But yeah,
Well,
more accurate version of the
yes.
yeah.
All right. So, in the time of the Buddha, there were certain teachings that seemed to have been really, really spot on, and that they were often or generally done in classic verse to make it
Mm,
easy to understand and to remember. And the
yeah,
sutras are set up that way. That's why they always start off with Eva Suttam, or thus I have heard.
right.
Okay, this is what I have heard. And they start off like that. And then it always gives a short introduction, generally, of where the Buddha was. And they're trying to set
Mm,
a setting because they didn't have calendars then. They would have definitely dated the thing if they knew how to do that.
yeah, absolutely.
So, but there's also a lot of indications because we put together kind of the life of the Buddha and we know what it was like good in the beginning and what text went along with that, good in the middle and what went along with that, and then good in the end, which is what it eventually became.
Yes, yeah.
That in fact we can actually now date the Ding and the Kai to the time of Asok. We can date the Abhidhamma as much later than that, but mixed in with the time of the commentaries, and all of that was done before the turn of the millennia.
Mm.
And so, but the Majjhima Nikaya, we know that that was done at the time of the death of the Buddha, which meant that this was the current stuff that they were already reciting, and that when they went to the that council, that's what they did, is they recited all of this stuff to make sure that they were all in line with it.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay, and many people, because Ananda's name is mentioned so often in the Majjhima Nikaya, they kind of gave the idea that he recited all of it, to where really he was there with the Buddha most of the time, so he was familiar with what was happening, but he was not solely responsible for putting these sutras together. It was already well-known literature that this was kind of the decisional process of, yes, this is what the Buddha taught.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and Mahakassapa was the one who ran that, but he was not going to let Ananda into that uh, recitation, because Ananda did not figure out the teachings of the Buddha finally until
Mm,
after the Buddha was dead. That Ananda was so dedicated to taking care of the Buddha and so devoted and all of this, that, and the other thing, that he knew spot on every word and was very, very sharp at it, but he didn't get it.
yeah, yeah.
That
Didn't have the,
happened.
yeah.
But he finally figured it out. But he didn't figure it out until it was pointed out that he didn't figure it out. And it was only after they pointed out that he really didn't get all of this anyway, that that's when he put two and two together, find it, that it actually really is a switch that you have to throw inside of your own mind of, are you going to be a victim, or are you going to be the lion here?
Mm. It's very interesting that you mentioned this actually, because I did the first sort of person I contacted was a guy called Vincent Horn. Can you hear me?
Yes, I know
I
him.
can yeah, yeah. I can hold it up like this if it's a bit better sound.
That's a better
But
sound.
brilliant. So he does like he offers like the first session is free sort of. So I was like, well, I'll check him out. I'd watched his podcast before, Buddhist Geeks podcast. I'd read his website, and I you know I was at the moment at the time I just read Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha by Daniel Ingram, and Contemplative Fitness by Kenneth Folk. So I was very much in the pragmatic Dharma sort of I was at that school, so to speak, right?
Welcome to
And
the
he
club,
trained
friend.
yes, right, yeah. So I contacted him and I said to him, this week I've had this really weird change in my practice, whereas all I need to do to sort of enter into like what at the time I would have called like equanimity or fourth jhana would be to just remember that I can, or just remember that the truth is already true, and then I just pop into it, and I'd be in this, like you said, this just sort of abundance mindset mentality, where I'd just be like I just wouldn't worry about things, right? I'd run based on just, well, I mean, I don't know, 'cause it feels a lot more effortless, right? Because I wouldn't be running based on worry and stuff, and so I'd lose a lot of the sense of being a doer and all this sort of stuff. And he said, yeah, that's very interesting, and that's sort of normal. So I'm guessing like that's sort of what you're talking about is that experience of where you can just like just in an instant just switch back into that Dukkha Nirodha state.
Yes.
And I said to him, like, it feels like there's no suffering there, unless I try to look for suffering, and then there's suffering. But it's almost like I'm creating the suffering in a way by looking for it. But if I don't, then it's
Precisely so. Precisely so. That's the whole point. That
brilliant.
yes,
That gives me a
yes.
lot of clarity, man. That gives me a lot of clarity. I
And
was kind of worried because I was like, I thought I was supposed to be noticing like Dukkha and the three characteristics. Where have the three characteristics gone? You know?
anytime anything changes, we can actually understand that in a physical science, meaning is something moved.
Mm,
An example of that would be, there could be a floor that you're standing on, and that on the floor there is a particular color. Let's just say, for instance, it's brown because it's a wooden floor. And there happens to be a wood tick sitting on that floor. perhaps in the crack or something like that, but he's just sitting there. You can't see him,
Mm.
but you're not looking for him. But if you happen to be looking at the floor when he's crawling across the floor, you'll see him.
Mm. Yes. Yes. No, 100%.
Yes, that
I
is what
follow.
anicca is all about, is if we're looking in the right places, we can see what's moving.
Right. Right. Right.
That's the study of anicca because it's also an introduction into the cause effect.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That things are moving, and in fact, things that move catch the eye. And that when it catches the eye, we kind of make a note or a dot of it. And wisdom is all about connecting the dots. And in fact, another Robert that I had, who is a good friend, he said something that a cliche that somebody had used in public or whatever like that, and he got a great big kick out of it because it fit right into what we were talking about. And he
Yeah.
says, and
Yeah.
I'm going to go use that with my dad. And I said, wait a minute. You have already been connecting this dot, these sequence of events. And so when this one happened, it was like a big serendipity, a big aha, those things fit in. And I really understand what's going on. Your dad's not going to have that same response to that cliche because he
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
not got it set up. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what we're talking about here is not then those kind of peak events that Western meditation people are looking for, but whether we need to start recreating that sequence of events and that result over and over and over and over and over and over again until it's no longer a peak result. It comes into the position of, I can do this.
Yeah. 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 And
All
it's like
right.
I guess that
That's
would
the
mean it's
winner's
like like the
attitude
default,
because it's
right?
still
Yeah.
the victim
Default.
who is
Yeah.
right. So it's still the victim who is searching after those peak experiences,
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Right. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
right? But
Because
when
they
they
don't have it.
become absolutely ordinary, now here's the part about it is that somehow a lot of people get the idea that fourth jhana is a peak as opposed to the first jhana. That somehow fourth jhana is somehow better than the first jhana.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the standard way of looking at it, and that's the way that the Buddha thought also. And that's why he gave up the jhanas, is because he did them all.
Mm.
And
Okay.
then he
Okay.
changed whole systems and went over to the Jains and started doing with Mahavir and started practicing the Jains, but he was already had his mind so rightly geared that he could do all the self-flagellation, the starving himself and pestering himself and all that kind of stuff. And so then he
Yeah.
fell
Yeah.
into the creek. You know the story. And he gets
Yeah.
up out of
Yeah.
the creek and what is the thought? He says, this is the point in time when he remembers when he was young, sitting under the rose apple tree and had the first jhana. Now, that meant that already he knew what he was talking about when he was a teenager, which gives a clue to the fact that he had a teacher. And in fact, we
Mm.
even know the teacher's name because that teacher was the same one who, when he was born, told the king, he prophesied that this child is going to be a Buddha. He's not going to be a wheel turning monarch. You've heard that story too.
Mm.
So that's the same guy then that was with the Buddha when he was out traveling doing all of this stuff. And he was also one of them who was the one who became Sotapan in the first talk that the Buddha gave. This is Kandana. All right, so he's well known. And the point that I'm bringing up about this is that uh, when he figured out what was going on, it was actually easy enough to talk to his friends because they already spoke the same language. And this guy just got, what? And he just got it right then. Most of us need to make these connections over and over and
Yeah.
over and
Yeah.
over and over again until now we get it. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's the way that human mind works. It works in a sequence that what we do is we connect the dots. We think we're looking for the truth, but what we're really looking for is serendipity.
yeah,
What we're
yeah,
really looking for is synchronicity of things happen this way and they happen that way and they do and so this is actually then the study of cause and effect, of seeing the fact that things are in cycles and
yeah,
everything
yeah.
is happening over and
It leads
over
to
and over
another and
again.
to another, and then it
And
restarts. Yeah,
and it comes up with the attitude that the Buddha talks about in very specific words, that I like to translate into modern slang English as been there, done that. Start
yeah,
having the attitude of I've been there, done that.
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Been
yeah,
there, done that. Been there, done that. What does that mean? Been there, done that means that when I've been there and done that, then I am now the champion. I don't even have to go back and fight that battle
yeah. You
anymore.
don't
I've
have to
I've
do it.
been there, done that, right. And that one of the places where the Buddha used that phrase um, was uh, when he was talking about what he's being accused of, because what his enemies were accusing him of was being an atheist.
Mm,
But the expression that they used was upon the breakup of the body, the existing being is annihilated.
mm,
All right. Well, that's what atheists believe. When I'm dead, I'm dead. But until then, I'm alive.
mm.
But that's not what the Buddha taught. He says, both formally and before, I teach only one thing, and that is dukkha and dukkha nirodha.
You can erode it.
See it
Yeah,
and come right out of it. That's all I teach. And then he was saying that though some people revile me, still on that account, there is no dejection of the heart. And though those who revere me and escalate, uh, even with that, there is no elation of the heart. And why is that? Because I've been there and done that before. I've been criticized. I got over it then. I can get over it now. I've
yes,
been
yeah, yeah,
praised before. I can get over it then. I can get over it now. Except really now, because I've been there, done that, I'm really good at getting over it, whatever it is. Which means that now we don't have to hold grudges anymore because they can't touch you anyway. I mean,
yeah.
people have tried to hurt you before in your past and they weren't able to do it. You survived.
Very true.
Or another way of saying it is that revenge is not only a dish best served cold, but revenge, the very best revenge, is living well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Living well is the best revenge. You can't touch me. Hey, I'm living high on the hog. It doesn't matter what he tried to do to me.
yeah, yeah,
All right, so this is all a part of that attitude that been there, done that, and that we can handle the reverence, we can handle the reviling, we can handle it all because it don't mean anything, because it's not me.
mm,
But that's the
mm.
whole point is that it's not me. Whoever you thought I was, basically who we are in reality, we are what we were told to be. That's what we are. We are what the sum total of everything that anybody's ever said about us and whether we agreed with it or not and whatnot
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that. And so that's all we are. It's just a sum total of the superego when you're speaking in Freudian terms. Well, guess what?
yeah,
That's like a blank slate. You can wipe that thing clean and write up there what you want to. You can remember what you want to remember. You don't have to remember what you thought that you had to remember because you were told to.
mm, mm. We sort of recreate ourselves just in the present moment as just
Right.
a
And
happy
that's the
person.
only time that we can do it is create ourselves in the present moment because the past is gone.
Yeah,
We
sure.
can't fix it. The future is yet to be. And so it doesn't exist. Neither the past nor the present exist. And not only that, but way over yonder doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is what's right in front of you. That's what comes in with the senses. Anything else. So if you and I start talking about ain't it awful what happens in Washington, D.C. with all the politics, we're both just speaking in concepts. The
Mm.
Washington, D.C. is not real for either one of us.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I'm in the UK, you're in Thailand. We're just, yeah, it's just,
Yeah. For me, Thailand is real, at
we don't
least
even
a
have to think
piece
about it.
of it. Right. We
Yeah, if
don't
we
have
don't
to
want to,
think
we can
about
just
it
drop
because
that.
it's just a concept. Right. We can think about what's happening now instead. We don't have to think about over there or back then because those things are not real.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I actually, I've been practicing something similar, just sort of intuitively, since I sort of started to realize that I could, right? Which was when I was talking, which was before, a couple of weeks leading up to my conversation with Vincent Horn, and there was like one thing that would always bug me and make me sort of lose this very clarified happy state would be that, like, if I don't worry about this thing, then something bad will happen, right? I won't be able to handle it. But then counterintuitively, the longer and more I practiced it, what I started to realize was that actually um I handle things even more effective. I've got even better creative problem solving when I'm just not worrying about them. And like that was just like the biggest, like, I guess, just like mind fuck, mind blowing experience, right? It's just like
We
I
worry
didn't even
ourselves
need
to
to worry
death. We
about it.
get tired of
Yeah,
worrying about
it didn't
something
even
and
help.
we're not,
Yeah,
and it doesn't help.
yeah,
That often our worry hides the intuitive right answer of our
yeah,
wisdom that will
yeah,
just pop
exactly,
up when we
exactly.
just look at what's going on. We can see it directly, but when we're
Yeah,
worried, we're talking ourselves into feeling bad and feeling like I'm victim and whatnot like that. Well, in fact, there was no problem anyway. There wasn't any problem ever anyhow.
yeah. And another thing I noticed was that I was worried that if I didn't worry about things, I would forget them. My memory actually got better. Because like whenever I'm like anxious, I sort of like I get like a tunnel vision with my memory where it's like I can only focus on one thing, it's like I'm sort of obsessing over it. But when I drop that, it's like, oh, now I can remember my whole like future and my goals and my whole past and everything. And like all of that just got like cleared away by doing this practice.
Yes, that's
That's
exactly
brilliant, man.
right.
That's brilliant.
Not only that, but it's well known, well talked about, well documented, and in many cases well experienced. Um, and that in fact, that's part of what is so remarkable about people like Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is everybody can see that this guy has a huge memory. He knows stuff because he's uh, uh, read it. So much of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa hasn't been published into English yet. And so, oh yeah. Here's an example of that. There is one room, big room, in a library that's dedicated to just works by Bhikkhu Buddhadasa in the National Library of Thailand. They've got a whole room separated just for his work.
That is, yeah, man. Big respect to him. Wow, that's impressive. That's very impressive.
Yes, it's so anyway, yes, good memory. Let's get back to the rose apple tree though.
Yes, yes. Back to
Do
the
you
story.
know what he did under the rose apple tree?
Um, is a rose apple isn't a Bodhi tree, is it?
Actually, the Thai word for it is champu, and that word is also used for the word pink. When the
Hmm.
rose apple is ripe, it becomes pink color, but it's still, even as it's ripening and green, it's still good enough to eat and very sweet and delicious. It's somewhat shaped like an apple, and it probably was given the name rose apple by the British.
Ah, yeah, right.
Okay. So Trumpu is the Thai name for it, but you can actually Google and get an image for rose apple trees. But anyway, it wasn't the rose apple tree itself, but that's in Buddhism the key word for people to remember that rose apple, because that's the story that the Buddha did something under the rose apple tree. What was
Hmm.
it?
Uh, became enlightened.
No,
No.
that happened in Bodh
Oh man.
Gaya. He was a
Just
child
decided it was
when his
the
dad was
there was a middle
doing
way.
a plowing ceremony. He was sitting
Right.
out. He wasn't in the plowing ceremony. The prince should have been out there doing the plowing ceremony, and he was hanging out under the tree instead.
Right, right.
Okay. So what is he doing? What did he do under the rose apple tree? It's very famous. I thought you'd know.
He decided that the middle way was the best way forward.
He entered
Because it comes to
he
timeline.
entered into the first jhana.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course you said. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I already told you
Yeah,
the
as a
answer
kid.
to the
Right, right.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was in and so now that he's crawling out of the creek that he fell into with the
Right,
thought
right.
the what I'm doing currently now of fasting and starving myself and burning off the karma, and that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
working. That's when he reflected upon why am I, because I'm doing all these austerities and doing all of that for possibly months, if not years, because there's pictures of the starving Buddha where his waist was so
Mm,
thin
mm.
that he could reach it around. So we're talking about not 20-inch waist, we're talking about maybe 14-inch waist. So how could he possibly have survived that? And he almost didn't. It almost killed him. But then he reflected, why am I afraid of the pleasures of first jhana? And then he reflected that actually the first jhana is the path to enlightenment. That's in the suttas. And then he
That is.
repeats it for sure that the first jhana is the path to enlightenment. Then when you read Sutta number 111, you find in there, by the way, the passage that I just described to you is in Sutta number 36 in the Majjhima Nikaya. But in Sutta number 111, by the title of One by One as they occur, or One by One, which means actually, this is the answer to the question, what should be my meditation object? The answer is when you're in first jhana, one by one as they occur. And as you do it one by one as they occur, that will naturally take you into the higher jhana. That jhana is
Mm,
almost like a violin is a violin. Which string are you playing?
mm.
Once you've got a violin with one string, you've got all the tools you need to put three more strings on. Or another way of saying it is once you get relaxed enough for first jhana, that the other jhanas are just natural progressions of becoming a little bit more relaxed.
Right, right. So, oh man, I'm loving this. I'm loving this. Yeah. You make a lot of sense.
And well, it's in the sutras this way. I'm just repeating stuff that I've learned and experienced from both the lineage with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and Achan Po, and also back to the sutras to the Buddha. So I've got three kinds of evidence: personal experience, a teacher who showed how, and also the original source. So I'm really lucky because Buddha didn't have that. He had
Yeah,
to go
yeah,
figure it out for himself. Bhikkhu
yeah.
Buddhadasa kind of figured it out for himself too, but then that gave him the door opening to the old boys club. That there had been a group already doing that for centuries. Okay, so um, this was the process of the Buddha figuring it out. That basically what we do is we get into the first jhana, and then we do the noting.
Mm.
What do we note?
The first jhana.
Yes, that's exactly right. That when we are not in first jhana, there is all kinds of things, especially and intentionally hindrances.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So that's what people note. If in a dry uh, meditation practice, they are actually developing the skill of sati. What they're looking for, or what they're remembering to do, is to look at dukkha, and that's what they find.
Mm.
First jhana has already gone through the process of removing the hindrances. So when you're looking in first jhana, what do you find? You find first jhana. That's what you find.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then, in fact, in order to develop the first jhana, you have to actually be on the first jhana's stuff. That's the whole point of it. And a good example of that is the issue of applied and sustained thought, right?
Mm,
Each
mm,
of the chart. Okay. The applied and sustained thought means that you can apply your mind to the wholesome. And then sustain it means that you guard the mind, or you continue to apply the mind to the wholesome, or you sustain the mind in the wholesome.
mm, mm.
And you
And so,
keep doing
yeah,
that. And so that is now your object of meditation is to make sure that you are monitoring every thought for making sure that it's wholesome. You're on guard now. And
mm,
that's the
mm.
quality of the first jhana, to being on guard duty.
Yeah,
Sustain that.
yeah.
Get yourself into that
We're
state.
guarding our relaxation.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
making it
and what is it we are guarding are several things. One of the things, in fact, we're what are we guarding is the satipatthana. We are guarding the body to make sure that it's relaxed. It's guarding the feelings to make sure that there is sukha. It is guarding the mind to make sure that the thoughts are wholesome, bright, gladdening, uplifting, everything's okay, everything is fine. And by doing so, also we're beginning to guard the Dhamma, or the things that are happening in the
mm,
mind. Okay,
mm.
so by guarding the mind, basically what we're saying is that the mind itself is the state of the condition of the mind rather than the objects of the mind. So in this regard, what we're doing is we're guarding the attitude, or regarding the frame of mind that we're in. Okay, what are you going to feel, as opposed to the actual what are you feeling?
Mm, mm.
Right. So that's that interconnection, and that this is the Sukha. So what are we going to be guarding is the Sukha. And as we guard that way and begin to sustain this, especially in a longer term practice over a period of time, we begin to get the idea that I can do this. And we begin to guard that attitude into being the champion,
That
the
confidence. Yeah, yeah.
the winner, the
The
confidence,
winner.
and
Yeah.
that's when the pity then kicks in. Okay. Now, normally what happens in Western mind, very common, very typical, is that we learn to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and we learn that two is better than one, two apples are better than one, three is better than two, and four is better than three. 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4 in a
Yeah.
sequence. And so we all get the idea that the higher the jhana, the better.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've definitely fallen for that.
All right. But we have to go back to the fact that the Buddha fell into that same trap. And he did all the jhanas all the way through, and yet he's decided that it was not worth his effort, that it was inferior, and he left. I mean, he actually left his teachers and the ones who were teaching the jhana. And
Mm,
he was
mm.
really good at it because he'd been doing it since he was a kid. So he was
Yeah.
all, and
Yeah.
then when he went into the austerities, it was the absolute best they had. He showed them all how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even that wasn't enough. In fact, you could see that
Yeah.
people who are
It's still
practicing
another like.
austerities is everyone who is doing austerities is doing it from a victim's position. You cannot be hard on yourself without victimizing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that austerities are something that victims do. That's why the Buddha was so careful to minimize the number of austerities that people brought in with them from all the traditions when they would become a monk. They would try all kinds of things because they'd been doing it before, so they're just doing the same things. And
Thinking they're gonna get better results.
and right, and basically the only main austerity that the Buddha allowed was barefoot. But that's and you can think for the Westerner that it really is that's an
Yeah.
austerity
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than a lifestyle. For some, it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
lifestyle. Some people never had shoes. I wear shoes about 3 or 4 hours a month
Yeah, yeah. Nice one, man. Nice. Yeah.
because I don't have to. I've learned to
Yeah.
walk on the ground, and so only when we go to town, only when we have to go to the bank
Nice.
or do a visa or something like that. But other than that, there's no reason for it. And so it's not an austerity; it's a lifestyle.
Mm, mm.
But in the beginning, definitely it was an austerity. Just
Yeah, I
like
mean
eating.
that's how things tend to go, isn't it? They're always a
Mhm.
bit rough in the start. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Uh,
best way.
and and changing your whole lifestyle or mentality out of the lifestyle that we have grown accustomed to is also a bit challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes effort to
And
sit and to.
so that's why the effort is put in to practice over and over and over again. And the main thing that we're going to practice is changing the mind and changing the body and changing the feelings. We're changing the mind by gladdening the mind. We're changing the body by breathing deeply and experiencing the body with the intention of having it relax. And then in the feelings, we're doing that indirectly when the body is relaxed and when the mind is gladdened, then the feelings will come by.
They follow. Yeah,
They follow
I
along.
like it. I like it.
And so
That's a
that,
very
well,
simple
that's,
instruction. Yeah,
mhm.
that's very clear. Yeah, and
Well,
then eventually,
back,
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and then eventually, when you get good enough at that, yeah, you can. Would you say that you can sort of interface with the feelings themselves and just change those with even less and less effort? So it's sort of it's such minimal effort. It's almost like you're just changing the feelings just to happiness, just by sort of choosing to be happy, like the feelings themselves.
Right. When you
Yeah,
get good at it and that
it's
you
like the
know that you can't change it, but sometimes you don't
and
want
that
to
confidence.
recognize it. Sometimes you don't want to feel good. Sometimes you
Oh,
want to
absolutely,
feel bad.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
But generally
You
we
sort of
feel
yeah.
bad when we don't have to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I find with myself, there's sort of like sometimes I have to go a bit like meta on it, and I have to really zoom out because I'll be like upset with myself for not feeling good, and then well, I wasn't feeling good, and now I'm even feeling worse because now I'm adding like this negative motivation to feel good onto already not feeling good. It's like I'm compounding it sort of, and I have to sort of zoom out and just it's a much more difficult letting go when there's that inner battle. But it has to be like this sort of, it's sort of like a faith kind of thing for me. I find like I have to just be like, all right, here we go, okay, and then that'll get me
Uh,
on like sort of a nice momentum with it. Yeah,
okay. Well, um, I often use the example of a roller coaster, and you're actually talking about it right now. That kids who really want to ride the roller coaster, they see pictures of roller coasters. They'll stand back at that from the roller coaster at a distance and study it and look at exactly what it's doing with great anticipation and excitement. They go get on the roller coaster. If they take grandma, she's really kind of reluctant to ride on the roller coaster anyway. And so she really doesn't look at it. She just
yeah,
has to get on and take it for a ride.
yeah,
But
yeah,
now, when it feels like that it's going really strongly uphill, she thinks that's the roller coaster. And then it gets to the top and she thinks that's the roller coaster. And then it starts
yeah.
that first long downhill to pick up the speed that it needs to do the rest of the roller coaster. She thinks that's the roller coaster. All right. That's exactly how we live our lives. That whatever part of life that we're in, we think that that's it. That's the life. And we don't recognize,
Yeah,
no, this is the whole thing. This life that we've got is just a roller coaster ride. You
I,
should have
I
studied it.
that's such a brilliant metaphor because I notice that in my mind. I do this all the time where like I'll be in a really like a bad mood, right? And I'll be like and all of my thoughts about like my whole life and the way it looks is all like hinging on this bad mood, right? It's all being affected by it. And then when I'm in a good mood, it's like, oh, everything's great. But you can actually go back and like notice, oh, that's just because I'm in this mood. Oh, that's just because I'm in this mood. Oh yeah, I've been here, done that, right? I've been here, done that before, made up like
Exactly so.
conclusions and like now I can sort of just like notice and like bring myself back, and that helps a lot as well. Yeah,
Hmm.
just like having that knowledge in the back of my mind can help me. Like sometimes it's not enough, but sometimes yeah, it can be enough to just be like been there, done that. All right, let's reset, right? Let's reset the
Eh,
emotional system. Let's
That's
relax.
exactly
Yeah.
right. Okay, so this is the power then of sati,
Mm.
because all we have to do then is just to remember that, to just put things on reset, just to remember, let's reset this thing. That's all we have to do is just remember to push reset.
Yeah, yeah.
When we
Brilliant,
get
brilliant.
it doesn't matter what kind of bad mood we've gotten ourselves into. And there's many examples. One of the ones that I like is that you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you boogie down the path.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Except that the word path is problematic here because we've already discussed that this is not a path, this is a method. So
Mm.
another way of
Mm.
thinking about it, when boogieing down the path, the Eightfold Noble Path is the boogie, and the path is life.
Mm. Mm. Yes, yes, yeah, yeah.
And so we
It's how you
boogie
walk.
on down the road, right? We just boogie on down the road. We pick ourselves up, we dust ourselves off, and we boogie on down the road. That's the reset. If you fall down, pick yourself up, reboot, clean things
Yeah,
out, get everything, and have a ball. That's
there
all
you
there is
go.
to it. And we do that within 1 second. We do that within a second of time because it only takes an instant to remember. The next thought moment is gladdening the mind. The next thought moment is taking a deep breath. All right. And here we go off into gladdening the mind and taking a deep breath, and we feel pretty good. And that's anapanasati right there. That's the satipatthana with the body, the feelings, the mind, and we're changing the mind's objects. Which, by the way, that's the whole point: is to recognizing that's what anicca is. Change your mind. You've got a choice.
Mm.
Change.
Mm.
The things are
That's
not
very
permanent.
empowering. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not in the sense of anicca is something to be observed. No, anicca is something to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
Okay.
sort of
Now
take, yeah.
there's more to the trilokana than just that. And that is that whenever anything changes, if there is resistance to it, that resistance is already redefined now as dissatisfaction.
Mm.
So any resistance to it is dissatisfaction itself. And if there is resistance and dissatisfaction, who is it resisting and who is it that's doing this dissatisfaction? That's the self. That dukkha
Mm.
and the self are deeply interrelated. In other
Mm.
words,
Mm.
whenever the self-preservation instinct kicks in, it kicks in the sense of preserving the self, which means that it's becoming selfish and also danger. This is dissatisfying. Dukkha is, in fact, the instincts.
Mm. Yes, yeah.
And also, dukkha is the self of the instincts. Okay. In the sense of the nesting instinct, who's in the nest? In the territory, who's outside the territory? Okay, in the
Yeah,
sense
yeah, yeah,
of the
right.
tools and the weapons, my weapons, etc., like that. So all of those instincts are
Mm.
built into
Mm.
it, and so now that means that you can see anicca, dukkha, anatta, or the trilokana, as a teaching that has to do with an either or an or, in the sense that it's like a fork in the road that we're traveling along, and now anicca happens, which means now we have to make a choice or a change. We can either choose dukkha and the selfishness that goes along with it, or we could take the road of, hey, it's not me, it's not
Yeah,
mine.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah.
let go of our attachment to it. We let go of our like selfness, I guess you
So
could
we're
say.
not so we're not giving it any resistance. We're
Yeah.
not adding disappointment. The disappointment is something that we add.
Oh, dude, bro, you just blew my mind. Dude, I do this all the
That's
time
my
when I'm
job.
meditating.
That's my happy job.
I do this all the time when I'm meditating where like I'll have like I'll become distracted by something and then I'll feel bad that I'm distracted. And it's like no, you've got to like like don't worry that you got distracted, you know? I feel like that's kind of
Be
like how
so
that
happy
does.
that you caught yourself distracted. Aha, I see you,
Yeah,
Myra.
there you go. There you go. Yeah.
That's the
That's
correct
brilliant,
way
man.
of
That's brilliant.
practice. That because we have to be free from all of that. That's the first jhana. So once we're in the first jhana, now the mind is fit for work. That's the brilliant part of it. That before we're in first jhana, the only job we have to do is to get rid of the hindrances. That's the
Mm.
first job we do. And we have to get on guard to get rid of them. Once they're out, now we can actually do the noting that needs to be done.
Now we have all
But
this mental RAM and energy freed up that we can use to practice. Yeah.
exactly. And in fact, to get in and maintain the first jhana, we're already doing the noting that needs to be done, which is to note that we're on guard, to note that this thought is wholesome, to note that I feel secure, to note that I feel comfortable, to note that I feel satisfied, to note, wow, this is really nice. Okay. To note that I'm relaxed, to note that we're in the third noble truth. That's the whole point is that we're only going to have whole notes of things that are wholesome.
Mm. Mm.
We're not going to be having noting of unwholesome stuff because we've already gotten ourselves into first jhana and we have eliminated that. So in one
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
we can only see uh, paticca samuppada in the way that it looks after we're outside of jhana. Well, that's the place that we get started anyway. So we get started up there at dukkha and the self and all of that. And as we begin to gain skills, there is a particular point where Bhikkhu Buddhadasa points out that pasa is that point of contact. That's the place where we're in first jhana. Why?
Mm.
Because now we're able to control the feelings. We can control the feelings and give ourselves the feelings that we want to have. So first
Yes.
jhana there
Yeah.
is in paticca samuppada at the point of contact, which means we've stopped the whole sequence already. We don't go up in there into the woeful states of the dukkha and grasping and clinging and, actually Vedana, Tanha, Upadana, um, uh, Bhava, Jati, Dukkha. That's the sequence in Pali. But we're not going there. We've broken that sequence already when we're in first jhana.
Yeah. We broke out of that
John,
cycle.
as I've said, enlightenment or getting enlightened is done in the first jhana. That's the whole point of it, is that once you're
Yeah.
in first jhana, you're free. So that means
Yeah. You
that
yeah.
the first jhana now means that we have to practice and sustain that state, that we have to get very, very, very good at it. Very good at it. That's the skill
Mm.
to develop. Is the skill. In fact, the Buddha talks about that there's three primary skills, but let's talk about the first two. And that is the first primary skill is to be able to get into the first jhana. The second
Mm.
skill is to be able to maintain the first jhana. Okay. And then the third skill is to get out of the first jhana. Well, now, wait a minute. That's not a skill. Getting out of first jhana is not a skill because the only option to the first jhana at this point is the hindrances to fall out altogether. You get where this is going for? Especially in the sense
Mm.
that there is
Mm.
no place else in the sutras where the second, third, fourth, or any of the other states are ever mentioned as either something to be maintained or a skill to be developed.
I see. I see.
Only the first jhana is the skill development stage to get yourself into the first jhana and then to stay there, because as you start to experience the wholesome, you will begin to go higher into the jhanas automatically because that's your
Yes.
object.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's your
Yeah. Of
object.
course. Right. Right. Yeah.
Okay. And not only that, but it's a travel into tranquility. It's a travel into uh, calming things down intentionally.
Yeah, yeah, and if you're in the first jhana and you want to be in some other jhana, like you're not in the first jhana anymore.
You're
You
not in
just
first
lost it
John
because
if
now you
you,
want. Yeah,
yeah, you've already lost it and
yeah.
you've gone in the wrong direction. Okay,
You got to be
so
contented. Yeah.
here is where subtle aspects of the noble of middle way, because the Buddha started talking about the middle way. That was the first thing that he talked about in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which set up the Eightfold Noble Path discussion. But the point about the middle way is that most Western Buddhism sees the middle path in a particular kind of way. And they see that the middle path, if you think about it as a middle path between, in one respect, of the austerities that the Buddha practiced, or self-harm, which we could also just think of as unwholesome thoughts, that we're sitting there flagellating ourselves when we're thinking about, oh, you ought to be meditating. Oh, I don't want to meditate. Well, it's time for you to meditate. That's self-flagellation right there. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
that's one end of the scale. The
Mm,
uh,
mm,
but the other end of the scale, which the Westerners think about in the sense of sensual desire, they think about it as brothel. So you're either in the Catholic cathedral flagellating yourself, or you're in the brothel. Those are the two extremes for the normal mentality of the middle path, somewhere in between those two extremes, right? Actually, what the Buddha was talking about was something kind of different than that, and that is in the sense that the middle path is the middle path between the sensual pleasures that he was talking about there actually can be re-understood in the sense of the pleasures of the jhanas, that people will lust for the higher jhanas. And this, by the way, was
mm,
his first talk
mm,
to guys who had been with him that whole time, doing the jhanas and doing the austerities, to where the way that is taught to ordinary people, that's the distinction between the austerities and the brothel, way, way over there in the sense of wrong behavior, or in the sense of
mm,
sensual
mm.
desire that you get in a brothel, to where the Buddha may have, in fact, if you look at it correctly, can say that no, he's talking about the pleasures of the jhana that people were lusting for.
Mm,
Okay, and
mm.
so the real middle path is not going to be a middle path where your crash landing site is hindrances, but rather that your landing place is going to be the first jhana. This is the real middle path between greed and ill will. The middle path between greed and ill will is having nothing to do with either one of them. That's the first jhana. The first jhana is the landing zone that we will call the middle path.
Mm, mm.
And so we have to get on that middle path by developing the first jhana, rather than continuing to flagellate ourselves or continuing to lust for higher and higher states.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah.
And
It's being okay with what's here. Yeah, okay
yeah,
now.
and that whole point then is the great deal point about satisfaction. That's the Sukkha, is satisfaction, because that's the actually opposite of the Dukkha that we're trying to get rid of. And so when we become satisfied, that's all there is to it. If you want some
Yeah,
higher pleasure, then now you're back into a state of wanting.
yeah, yeah. You fucking yeah, yeah, you fucked yourself up, man. You, god damn it. Ah, that's good, man. That's good.
Okay, so once we have that kind of understanding, then we can begin to see that if I start paying attention to the wholesome things, the higher jhana factors will make themselves available one by one as they occur. And
Yes,
that the
yeah.
first thing that we're going to
Pass
look
on that.
at is applied and sustained thought, because when we can begin to put some gaps between the thoughts, that's the mind moments that we spend between the discursive thoughts are often spent in either direct observation in the senses or the experience of emotion. Which means if we start paying attention to the way that we feel after we've gotten ourselves into it, how good can you get? And that's the pity that arises and peaks in the second jhana, because that's all we're paying attention to is how good I feel.
Mm, mm. That makes
That's
a
the
lot of sense.
hallmark
Yeah.
of the second jhana. I'm not talking to myself about how good I feel anymore. I'm just sitting there and enjoying how good do I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
After a while, we begin to recognize that feeling that good takes a little bit of effort. And
Mm,
so we
mm,
let that subside down to just Sukkha, to where we're just completely satisfied. Okay. But then that's when we begin to let go of the breath, just being completely satisfied in the state of Sukha. Is now we can go in by letting go of everything, we can relax even further into Opeka. One by one as they occur. So first we start looking at the thoughts, which are the hallmark of the first jhana. That's what gets and establishes that first jhana. And then we start paying attention to the gaps of how good we feel. And then we let that how good we feel kind of relax. That it becomes, it's no longer a flood. Now it becomes a pond, kind of, in the third jhana, that we're just so
mm,
satisfied.
mm, mm.
And then in the fourth jhana is when um, we can experience the upeka and all of the other stuff. But by now, remember at first jhana, we were at the point of contact. Now we're going down and started to look at perception itself. How do we actually manufacture thoughts?
Mm, mm,
And so the mind not only is very, very stable and very serene, but it's also very sharp and sees things that are happening at a very, very fast, much faster level. And when we really learn to control these perceptions, then we can just sit in sensory awareness and just let the Dhamma Kai, or let God, oh gosh, you just feel so good. just, just, uh,
Yeah.
just to experience reality in the senses without having to make sense of it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Without having to interpret any of it at all. Yeah.
Without having to interpret it at all, that we can literally become that infant that is just so surprised at being alive without
Yeah.
having to think about it or plan about it or remember about it. We're
And
just
why would you
in.
need to, right? What do you need? What do you need when you're there, when you're that chilled? Yeah.
Exactly. And so this is where the sensation of the perception and cessation of feelings occur, to where we're just there in sensory awareness or down to the level of consciousness without having to have a layer of filtration added to it anymore.
Mm, mm,
That's but we go into those states by inspecting our way into them.
mm,
And this is all laid out very clearly in a number of suttas.
mm.
But we get, as Westerners, we get greedy about these things. And so we're not capable of getting them because we have to always do it from a state of complete relaxation, complete serenity, complete get a load out of this, rather than, wow, wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and so we're skipping over the first step, which is the first jhana, it's the satisfaction. Yeah.
And so that's why
Getting
the
ahead of ourselves.
jhanas are so rare for Westerns. I'm not saying they don't fall into it. Yeah, they happen, they pop in, and you get an experience, and then you pop back out, and now you want to get back into that experience, but you don't know how you got in there, and now you've got the greed for it
Yeah,
going.
yeah, you feel even worse. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Oh, dude, I've experienced that so many times. Yeah. It's like you get out of it and you don't know how you get back, and so you're just like struggling to try and remember. And then it's how you get back, but it's like, no, you gotta you gotta stop struggling, man. You know, you're just
yeah, you
making the
got to
quicksand worse.
stop wanting it. Exactly. You got to
Yeah.
be satisfied with this present moment. How satisfied can you be is the jhanas. And when you want jhanas, you're not satisfied. You can't get it. It
Exactly,
is
exactly.
that
It's
this is the most classical catch 22 that I know of.
it is, man. It's like it's a paradox, isn't it? It's a strange loop. It's like there's one way in and there's one way out, you know?
hmm
Yeah.
And so this is the key then to practice. So the next time you call, we'll actually go right into the Eightfold Noble Path and how these four things fit together precisely into practice of Anapanasati. because it's all
mm.
very, very well spelled out. But we've got the tools that we need to get started, in the sense that these are skills to be developed. You have to develop sati as a skill. You have to develop right inspection and investigation and look. That's a skill to be developed with discernment. That's actually the development of wisdom itself. Is it
I like,
looking, investigating?
and they've got to be
Okay.
balanced as well, don't they? Because if you have
Well,
too much like discernment without the satisfaction, you're just like sort of wasting your time. But if you have loads of satisfaction, but you're not discerning, maybe you get stuck. Or would you say is that alone is enough?
exactly. When you develop the skills out of balance, the worst case is sati only, and that's the Mahasi method,
Mm, mm,
because it's only got sati. It doesn't have the balance. It doesn't have the balance of the shraddha. It doesn't have the balance of the of the wisdom. It doesn't have the balance of the joy. It just
mm,
has the sati. So there's it doesn't have those five things balanced.
mm.
So you're exactly right. We have to balance those things, which means that we have to develop each one of them as a skill. And there's a way or an order that we do that.
I like it, man. I like it. I like where this is going. This is giving me
Okay.
so much clarity because I've read so many different books and different people's methods and techniques and their opinions, and they're always conflicting. But you're here saying like, no, all of the five strengths, they're five skills first of all, and all of them are they need to be they're all important, but they need to be in the correct balance. Yeah,
Right. And
yeah. You're not just like
well,
rejecting jhanas outright or rejecting vipassana outright. It's like no, there's
no,
yeah,
I'm
more
not
holistic.
rejecting anything. And we're putting it together, the puzzle of how all
Yeah,
this stuff fits in. You can't throw pieces out because you don't like them. That's what they've been
yeah.
doing for centuries.
That's I mean that's like the whole point you're trying to fix, right? Throw shit away if you
Exactly.
don't like it. Yeah.
Yeah, is let's find out how all of this stuff fits in together, because one example or one way of thinking is that we're not ever going to destroy or kill the instincts, and we wouldn't want to anyway. What
Yeah.
we need to
Yeah.
do is to know them very well in a very friendly way, so that they become our allies and friend rather than our driving force.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So we're not like disowning like and making a shadow out of these parts of ourselves. Yeah.
And so that's the path. And it's easy peasy. I mean, it's just so wonderful once you practice and get the hang of it.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. That's brilliant. Man, I had like a whole list of questions and you've answered most of them just in your discussion already, which is wonderful.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
All right, Robert. Well, we'll finish now. This has been a delightful
Sounds good. Good place
conversation.
to
I've
end. Yeah,
really
man.
enjoyed it.
I'm looking forward to this, man. I'm really looking forward to this.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we'll see you.
Right. I'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye bye.
All right, ciao. Have a good day, man.
Yeah, it is.